Everyone. Greetings. Welcome to the Center for Brooklyn History. My name is Marcia Eli. It is really my pleasure to greet you on behalf of all of my colleagues here at the Center and at the Brooklyn Public Library, which we are part of, and at the library's Arts and Culture team, BPL Presents. Tonight, I believe, is the first public program in honor of Jeff Chang's book. So a round of applause for that. I am really thrilled to welcome two authors, Jeff and Katie Gee Salisbury, both of whom have written spectacular biographies about Bruce Lee and Anna May Wong, respectively. Their books are intimate and wide-ranging page-turners. Tonight, Jeff and Katie will share how Bruce and Anna's life stories parallel their struggles and triumphs, and more broadly, their legacies today. You came in, you may have seen that we have both books on at the shop over here in the corner. Jeff's Water Mirror Echo, Katie's Not Your China Doll, and they both will be signing copies at the table in the front following the program. So after their conversation with each other, we'll take questions from you. Our ushers will bring the mics to your seat so you don't have to line up anywhere or do anything, but it would be great if you could stand when you ask your question. And then finally, I want to just thank our two program partners tonight, the Asian American Arts Alliance and the Sunset Park branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. A round of applause for the Sunset Park branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. Yes. It was a joy to work together with both of them. So now let me tell you just a little bit more about these two authors, and I will turn it over to them. Katie Gee Salisbury is the author of Not Your China Doll, a biography of Anna May Wong, the first Asian American movie star. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Vanity Fair, The Believer, the Asian American Writers Workshop, and elsewhere. She was a finalist for the Jerome Hill Artist Fellowship in 2021 and gave the TED Talk as American as Chop Suey. She also writes the newsletter Half Caste Woman, a fifth-generation Chinese-American who hails from Southern California. She now lives in Brooklyn. Jeff Chang is a writer, host, and cultural organizer. His book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of the Hip-Hop Generation, was named one of the best U.S. nonfiction books of the last quarter century. He's also written the award-winning books Who We Be, A Cultural History of Race in Post-Civil Rights America, and We Gonna Be All Right, Notes on Race and Resegregation. He is the host of the Signal award-winning podcast on artists and ideas, Edge of Reason, and of Notes from the Edge, produced by KALW Public Media. It is so exciting to have this conversation here. Thank you. Thank you both for being here. Please help me welcome Jeff and Katie to the stage.
Well, hello, Brooklyn.
It's great to see so many faces here. I mean, pack the whole building.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Katie's coming from not too far.
No, just down the street, basically, Bed-Stuy.
Yeah.
Whereas you're coming from across the country.
I'm coming from across the country, but we're also coming back in a lot of ways because we lived here in the early 2000s, actually right around 9/11. So a lot of memories and friends and loved ones here still in Brooklyn, and it feels like coming home in a lot of ways. So,
well, we're all very glad that you're here and you're back.
Thank you, thank you. So I wanted to let you all know kind of how this came about. I had been working on this book on Bruce Lee for a little while, and as I was finishing up, your book, Not Your China Doll, came out, and I rushed out and bought it because I had already done a little bit of thinking and writing about Anime Wong, not nearly anywhere near a fraction of what you had done. And I was so excited. The first draft went in, and I had already actually begun reading the book, but it was too late to really like absorb all of it. And since then, I gotta say this: there's a lot of books out there about Anime Wong, but yours is by far, to me, the epitome of it, like the classic biography on Anime Wong. It's beautifully written, it's incredibly well researched, and it's the only book, or one of the only books, no, it's the only book, I'll say that. No disrespect to any other Anime Wong biographers who might be in the house, but for me it was the book that really captured the awe and the reverence that you feel when you first see anime on screen. You know, she's just larger than life, and you really were able to capture that, and as well the sort of deep psychology, you know, the hurts that drove her and all these other kinds of things. So I just wanted to ask you, like, how did you get into this? How did you actually start thinking that you might write about Anime Wong? Because this is before the Anime Wong revival.
Oh yeah, way before.
Way before.
I just want to say, like, it's such an honor to have you feel that way about the book that I wrote. Like, it means so much to me to hear that. And I honestly would say the same thing about your book, and we're going to get to that. But just to talk about how did I come across Anime Wong, I was a 19-year-old college student doing my first internship at the Chinese American Museum in Los Angeles. My first day on the job, the curator took me through the different rooms, and there was a photograph of a Chinese American woman in a convertible in a parade. And it just stopped me in my tracks, and I had to know, who is that woman? And she explained that she's Anime Wong. She's this internationally famous Chinese American movie star from the 1920s. And it just blew my mind. You know, I went home and asked my mom, do you know who Anime Wong is? And she said, well, it sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you anything about her. And I kept asking people, do you know who this is? And everyone said, no, I don't know. I have no idea. And I was like, how could it be that this woman, who was like a pioneer of early cinema, and no one remembers her anymore? And also, like, having grown up in the 90s, where like I had 3 Asian American role models that I looked up to, who I would see on television: B.D. Wong on Law and Order, because that was the only context in which I knew him. Margaret Cho, All American Girl, and I was, you know, devastated when that show was canceled. And Michelle Kwan, Olympic skater. And so I was like, there was someone before them, because I was only had 3. How could there? I mean, there was this woman, and she didn't just do it in Hollywood. She made films in Europe, and anyway, so, you know, it really stuck with me. And, you know, having my own family history a little bit intertwined with hers, being our family being Cantonese, being here for several generations, my mom growing up in LA Chinatown, Anime Wong growing up in LA. So there was a lot of overlap, and in some ways, getting to look at her story and her life was also a way of connecting with my own roots, right? And understanding my family's story as well, despite, you know, well, they're not Hollywood stars, but you get the picture. But
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I would say that, like, reading your book on Bruce, it's different from all the other books. There's a closeness, and you really strip him down to the person, not the myth, right? We finally get a look at him as this person that we might actually recognize and remember from, like, when we were in school or at family functions. I mean, when he's young, he's so kind of, you know, he's such a one-track mind, and he's really into kung fu, and I could just see him as that, like, little fobby kid, but who was, like, annoying. He was always doing that one thing, and you're like, why is that guy like that? You know, but I kind of got it. I was like, oh, like, Bruce Lee was like one of those kids that I went to school with, and I recognized him, and it was, anyways, I think it's just, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about why you wrote this book and the lens through which you chose to write it, because it's Bruce's story, but it's also a lot more than that.
Yeah. So I was approached, I had written this book on hip hop, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, the history of the hip hop generation. And so there was an Asian American editor, and this is a while back, but he'd come to me and he's like, hey man, you did this book on hip hop. You should be able to do a book on Bruce Lee, right? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And so that's how kind of it got started. But, I'm just like everybody else. I'm sort of part of the generation of kids who, when Bruce passed, I was alive. But it's almost as if like Bruce was always there in my life. And I'm part of the generation that discovered Bruce first on TV, as opposed to, seeing him in the movies and that kind of stuff. I'm part of the generation that kind of lionized him by putting him behind a pair of turntables and photoshopping that, and then, DJ Bruce, right? So that's sort of my vibe. And for us, I think coming up, same age as Brandon, same age as Shannon, like, for us, like, he was already like the guy. He was the symbol of what you wanted to be, but he was also actually too the symbol of how other people were stereotyping us as well. So you almost kind of had to in some way or another deal with the image of Bruce, right? Whether it's kids ironically now bullying you for being a Bruce Lee lookalike or something like that, right? Same kind of haircut or whatever, or like fearing you because they think you have Bruce Lee level skills in a dark alley. So it was just like, it was like that. Like we had to kind of deal with that. And in that way, I think every generation, has like its own Bruce Lee. And I wanted to try to figure out what was behind that. And in doing that, I realized that his story was a lot, just like Anime Wong's story was a lot like yours. Like his story was a lot like members of my family, members of my community, friends, loved ones. Like Bruce was born in San Francisco, so he's an American citizen by birthright citizenship, which now certain folks down the road want to take away. But he moved back and lived in Hong Kong and grew up there. And then he comes back to the US, and there's a whole story behind that, at the age of 18. And that was my grandfather's story. My grandfather was born in Hanalei, Kauai, before it was American soil. No, actually afterwards. He was born, yeah. So he's born there, but they moved back to southeastern China. There's war going on. So he's like, I'm going to come back. And at the age of 17, he moves back to Hawaii. And so I'm like, wow, there's that link. And in so many ways, I think all of us see Bruce, and even though we might not know his story, just like we might see Anime Wong, and even though we might not know her story, and we immediately identify with it, and then diving in, we've come to find all these resonances, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about getting to write about a hero within your community, right? You kind of bring all of that knowledge and familiarity to the project. Yeah. You mentioned, the fact that Bruce was born in San Francisco and then went back to Hong Kong. Some people, I think the chapter in which you talk about this is called Anchor Baby, yeah. Right? And some people use that term in a pejorative way, right? Wonder if you could talk a little bit about his immigration experience, and we could talk a little bit about, when he's born and when he comes back, this is post-exclusion, Chinese exclusion law, but there's still a lot of vestiges of that and consequences from that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll tell a little bit about this, but I'd love if you could like unpack as well Anime Wong's family's story as well, because that sort of precedes it and it kind of allows us to understand the impact of the Chinese Exclusion Act as well.
Sure. Yeah, I could start there, and then you'll pick up because it'll be a seamless.
Cool. Cool. I'm gonna also put on a picture too. Like, which one should I put up?
Oh, should we do
Number 2? Yeah, I could do that here.
Okay.
So we have pictures here, so you can actually see. This is.
Yeah. So it's Anime Wong's family. She's the young woman in the back on the far right. So her father, Wong Sam-sing, was born in Northern California in a mining town in 1860. So it was his parents who came over, which I know very little about, but his parents would have come over during the gold rush. And he was raised there. At some point, his mother dies, so he's sent back to China to grow up, and then comes back as a young man working in the mines, and later opens laundry, which is what you see in the right side photo is the laundry that he had in Los Angeles. So Anna May Wong, by the time she's born in 1905 in Los Angeles, she's a third-generation Chinese American, which is somewhat unusual. I mean, not that unusual, but most people in America have never met a Chinese person. So the idea that there is someone who could be Chinese American, born there, and speak fluent English is not something they would ever conceive of. And that's kind of the theme of a lot of her early interviews, right? Because you speak fluent English. But, and then most working class families, she's also helping out at the laundry and things like that. So all of this is happening under the specter of the Chinese exclusion, which is put into law in 1882 and then kind of renewed repeatedly and codified. And so what that means for her family, because they have been in the U.S. prior to that law, they didn't get deported, they didn't get kicked out, is that now there's a whole system in which they have to prove their identities. There's identity papers. In fact, the first photographic IDs in this country were created for Chinese Americans as part of the Geary Act, and then that's part of the Chinese exclusion. So you have to carry your identity papers with you at all times. And the first time that she really learns this lesson is actually when she's working she's about 19 at this point, working on a production called Alaska that's actually being filmed in Canada. And so they're traveling up to Canada to film it to film there. And as they get to the border, the crew suddenly realizes they have a problem, because they have Anna May Wong and they also have James Wong Howe, the cinematographer, who's one of the cameramen. And they have these two Chinese American crew members, and they don't have the papers they need to cross the border and then be let back into the country. And so somehow the studio throws their weight around, they fix it, they get their papers. And so actually her first identity papers here, you can see they were created in Seattle. I believe it says that up there. So she learns that lesson pretty quickly, that she's not like other Americans, right? She could, if she left the country and didn't have her papers, she wouldn't be let back in, because there's no way to prove she is who she says she is. And so the other thing that goes along with this too is if you would like to leave the country, you need to apply. You need to ask for permission, and that's what the form on the right is. Form 430 is applying to the U.S. government to ask to leave and explain why you're leaving and when you're coming back. And then once you return, you have to submit to interrogation, and you'd be asked a number of different things about, your profession, where you lived, about your family members.
Really intrusive questions.
Yeah, I mean, they'd show you photographs of people and say, well, who is this? And they'd have photos of people you never met, right? Just to test if you were telling the truth. Yeah.
They were really trying to regulate the traffic they were still acting to exclude Chinese Americans and Asian Americans in all the ways that they possibly could.
Right, and also to them, they couldn't tell us apart. So they didn't trust anyone, right? They're like, how do I know you aren't somebody else? And there are ways in which the community also found to subvert these laws, right? With the earthquake and the fire that destroys all these records in San Francisco, people are then able to claim names on paper. But yeah, it'd be interesting to hear how the legacy of this exclusion, which does finally get repealed in 1940? 1943. Partially. And then 1965 is the Hart-Celler Act, but 1943 is World War II, and China's an ally because they're a democracy at that point.
But so it's interesting. So Bruce is born in 1940. So when he's born, the Exclusion Act is actually still in place. And if you roll back a year before that, so his parents were coming over to the U.S. Because war is kind of brewing in Southeast. Oh yeah. So, okay. War is brewing in southeastern China, and they're expecting that any day the Japanese are going to cross and invade Hong Kong. So in 1939, a lot of the efforts nationally and internationally are about raising funds to, defend the Chinese nationalist government. Is it not up? That's weird. Oh, you got to hit play. Yep. And so this is the climate in which his parents decide they're going to come on a tour and actually play the Cantonese opera. His father's a Cantonese opera actor. And they're going to do a tour across the U.S. in Chinatowns, and they're going to actually make some money so that they can make it through the war. They're really planning ahead, right? And so Bruce says, I don't know if I was meant to be born in the U.S., like if they did it by design or not, but I was, and that's why I'm an American-born Chinese. So here's Bruce, pudgy cheeks and all, and he literally, this is about 2 or 3 weeks after he's played his first movie role as a girl in a movie called Golden Gate Girl by an Asian American pioneer named Esther Ng, who was good friends with Anna May Wong, is what I understand.
I think they were friendly. I don't know
They were friendly?
if
They're not good friends? Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think they were friendly, but yeah.
I mean, amazing story, Esther Ng. Just remember that name and look it up. But they decided they're going to go back. They've got the money. They want to go back. They don't want to stay in the U.S. Why would you stay in the U.S.? Like, you can't live anywhere but Chinatown. If you step one block outside of it into the financial district or to Nob Hill, you're going to get routed. People are going to be telling you that you shouldn't be there, and they'll physically make you understand that. The job prospects are pretty nil for the long term. So the idea that his parents would have come here to have him so that he could be American and be an anchor baby, it's just really crazy. It doesn't make any sense to me. So in any case, what happens is they have to fill out the Form 430 as well, because they want him to be able to exercise his American citizenship in the future. And so they interview his parents, the alleged father, the alleged mother, and this is his Form 430. And what it says is he's leaving the U.S. for a temporary visit abroad.
Right. I remember that from the book, and it's so funny. It's like, how many years?
Yeah,
is
it's 17
gone
more
for?
years before he comes back. But that's Bruce. This is actually a picture of him in the movie Golden Gate Girl as a little girl dressed up, and that's a amazing picture from one of the family albums that made it through the wartime. That's Bruce laughing in the middle right there. Yeah. So Anna May Wong got into the movie business early, though. And this is really fascinating to me, because this is a time where Hollywood is actually just beginning to take off. And so she's at the beginning of the beginning in a lot of ways.
She is. She's literally in the right place at the right time. Around 1910, 1911, all the film studios that had been starting to set up actually here in New York and New Jersey, they're filming mostly with daylight. They don't have incandescent lights that are strong enough to film with yet. So they realize if we go to California, we could actually film all year round. So they're just starting to move out to LA. They're kind of, flying by the seat of their pants, right? They're filming in the streets of LA. They're filming in Chinatown very often, because Chinatown is free atmosphere. They don't have to build a set. They can just show up and no one's going to tell them not to. So Anna May Wong is a little girl at this time, and she's often making deliveries for the laundry, her dad's laundry, and gets caught up in, wow, what are they doing? What's that crank machine? And by her own telling, she becomes such a regular at these, movie sets that they start giving her the nickname the curious Chinese child. She's, asking a lot of questions. And so her fascination with the movies begins as soon as the movies are like in existence, essentially. And pretty soon she's taking the tip money or lunch money to go down to the Nickelodeons to watch all the reels from end to end. She's skipping Chinese school. Her dad was actually quite angry about that, because he's paying for the Chinese school. He said, if you're going to skip school, why can't you skip the other school that's free and then go to Chinese school? But she was very determined. And so I think by 11 or 12, she's seen enough movie stars in person that she thinks, oh, well, I can do that. And I can probably do it better. So she's decided she's going to be a movie star. And by 14, when there's actually the flu epidemic, pandemic in 1918, she gets a break because they can't get enough extras for these films, because nobody wants to go out, because nobody wants to get sick. And so that's how she gets into her first film, The Red Lantern.
Wow, because of a pandemic.
Yeah. Exactly.
I know everybody's just loving that delicious irony there. That's amazing. That gives her the freedom to become this star. Tell us about Toll of the Sea then. How did she get to that?
So, after a couple of years of doing some extra parts, some bit parts, maybe 1 or 2 credits, she gets cast in this film that's basically a Madame Butterfly story called The Toll of the Sea. And it's a total fluke because it's being made by Technicolor, which is primarily a company run by scientists. And their whole purpose in creating a film is to demonstrate the technology of the color film. And so they're not concerned about bringing in box office stars. They just need to show off what they can do. And at some point they decide, okay, we're going to set this story in China, Madame Butterfly Tale. We want to use all these like rich colors from, Chinese clothing and embroidery and antiques, and they can only really use red and green. So they have a very specific palette. So they've decided, along with that they're fine with casting Asian actors to play Asian roles, which was not the norm in Hollywood, right? You had Madame Butterfly films done before where Norma Talmadge and Mary Pickford had played the lead in Yellowface. So it definitely was not the norm. But in this case, because it was not seen as this big box office project, they said, let's just, cast Asian actors. And so at 17, she gets her first leading role, and they kind of don't even know what they've done, because she just breaks out the waterworks. She knows this is her big moment, and she's really able to capitalize on it. And so she becomes famous for her tears, but she really shows that off in this film because she's doing it naturally without the aid of glycerin, which is the fake tears that they would use.
The little eyedroppers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just to finish the story of this film, it unexpectedly becomes a hit because of her acting. She's this kind of virtuoso discovery, right? This young woman who's able to take a really cliched story and make it original and human and urgent again. And the critics are like, it made me cry. I never thought I would ever cry at another Madame Butterfly tale. And Douglas Fairbanks, who's big actor and producer at this point, he sees it. He's just about to cast for his Arabian Nights spectacle, The Thief of Baghdad. He's looking for exotic types. And he's like, wow, well, she's got something. I want her in my film.
I love this because she's like the first American-born Asian in Hollywood to become a superstar. There's another Asian American in Hollywood, Cecilia Hayakawa, who's also a superstar at this particular time, but she's the first American-born. And so that's a pioneering role. But she's also the first woman of color in full color, right? It's just amazing, right?
Right.
To me, one of the things that we should talk about is the stereotypes that Bruce and Anna May Wong are kind of forced to play in this. So tell
Absolutely.
folks like what that Madame Butterfly story is.
Madame Butterfly's story is essentially about an Asian woman saving a European sailor. They fall in love. He promises her that he'll take her home with him. He doesn't. She gets pregnant, has a child, and I guess spoiler alert, he comes back with his European wife or American wife in Anna May Wong's case, and they discover that she's had this mixed-race child. And she gives up the child to them, feeling that they'll be able to give him a better life than she can. And then she throws herself into the sea. So, yeah, it's that kind of story. So the helpless maiden, the China doll story that the woman who falls in love with the white man but can never marry him because those two worlds have to stay separate, right? This is a time when interracial marriage is illegal across the United States. The other side of that coin for Anna May Wong is playing the kind of treacherous, evil Asian, the dragon. Later on, it really becomes the dragon lady, but in some of these early, like in Thief of Baghdad, which is the next film, which is a huge blockbuster, by the way, and completely launches her career, she breaks out as the Mongol slave. and she's the evil, lady in waiting who's helping, the Mongol king who actually wants to usurp power in Baghdad, blah, blah, blah. So that is kind of another form that these stereotypes take, right? She's always the secret, plotting, scheming snake in the grass.
What's so interesting about Anime Wong's story is that there's a way to read it where you can just sort of track the evolution of the stereotypes and the sort of outer walls and how little they move during the course of her, 50-year, 40-year career?
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah, 40-year career. But what I love about your book is that what you constantly show is how they'll give this much, but she's taking that much. She's really trying to push it to the outer limits. And I think in that respect, she is able to become this huge star, such a draw for white audiences, as well as, of course, Asian audiences, because you could just feel her pushing this at every second that she's on the film. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk a little more about stereotypes that Bruce was slotted into, but I think the other interesting thing about their careers that's similar is that they both found themselves not getting anywhere in Hollywood, right? Mm-hmm. They couldn't get the parts that they needed to actually show off their talents. Yeah. And Anime Wong eventually has to go to Europe, where she kind of becomes the toast of the continent and has this triumphant 3 years there doing all sorts of things, films, live theater, and comes back and gets a new Paramount deal. I think with Bruce, he's got to go to Hong Kong and then finally come back to Hollywood.
Yeah. I guess we could talk about Bruce a little bit because we haven't for a few minutes, but we should come back and talk a little bit about how these walls get broken down. Because one of the ways that we're coming at what we're coming at tonight, which is looking at Asian Americans in Hollywood, is to kind of trace the arc of kind of what happens, right? So Bruce actually goes back to, I'll just summarize this real quickly, but Bruce goes back to Hong Kong and actually becomes a child star. And this is a period during which there's a lot of chaos. The war has ended, and the Chinese Civil War is about to end, actually. And so refugees are pouring across the border into Hong Kong. And this is a hugely chaotic period because the British colonial administration, Hong Kong is a British colony, doesn't care. They don't give a shit about Hong Kong. So they're basically ruling it by taking all the money that they can get out of it. I'm simplifying greatly, but it's not that far off. And letting the colony deal with its own problems. And so the refugees are moving in, large numbers of folks, they can't find housing, they're setting up shanties on the hillsides, fires are breaking out, and it's a very chaotic time, and they're looking for heroes on screen. And so in the same way that Anime Wong is walking into the beginnings of the Hollywood industry, Bruce, because of his father has been a comedian and an opera star. And now they're moving from the stage to the screen in Hong Kong. And all of the filmmakers have moved from China into Hong Kong. Hong Kong's film industry is about to blow up. It's really about to blow up. And Hong Kong, which is experiencing all this social chaos, are looking for heroes to identify with. And they identify with kids, actually, abandoned kids, orphans, because in some ways they feel like they've been abandoned by the British colonial administration and they've been abandoned by China. And so the orphans that they love are streetwise kids who are tough, who can handle themselves, who are out there to make money. The hip hop links here, the fires and the the survival type of stuff, it's all in this from the very beginning. And so, he's even playing these roles when he gets older. He gets a little bit older, that's his father, and he's literally this kid who's gonna beat up his father, he thinks. And then his last movie that he makes in Hong Kong is called The Orphan. And he grows up to be a kid who is literally saved by a good-meaning Confucian principled, actually principal of an orphan school, and he turns out to be his dad because they've been split by the war. So it's a melodrama, but this is kind of the evolution of Bruce as a child star. At the same time, he is having a split personality. He's learning Wing Chun. That's Ip Man on the left over there. And he's a cha-cha fiend. He's a cha-cha champion. He just dances. He cha-chas real smooth, y'all. And so that's Man Lan, Margaret Leung on the left in that photo. And so he's about to have this great career, but he gets into too many fights, and his parents are like, "You're out of here. Like, we can't control you. You're gonna die. Your brother is like, saying that all of these folks want to kill you. You're out there just trying to fight everybody that you can. You love the smell of blood on your lip. Like, what's going on? You can't live like this. We're gonna put you on a boat, on a slow boat to San Francisco. 3 weeks. We're gonna give you $100, and then you're gonna have to figure it out." Right? So that's how he ends up in the US. He comes back, he can barely speak English because he's been not paying attention in all of his British private school English classes. And so he's literally living the immigrant experience. He's working in a Chinese restaurant, and he's working for the most powerful Asian American in the country at that time, Ruby Chow. And he is going to school, and he's in ROTC, and he's trying to become American. And so this is sort of Bruce at this particular age. I'll tell one more thing, and then we'll fast forward to the Hollywood piece, and then we can get back to the stereotypes, because there's so much to talk about here. So Bruce really learns what it means to become American in Seattle, because he's somebody who has to live in segregated communities. So he's living with black folks, with Japanese Americans who've been incarcerated in the wartime. And they're coming to him and they're saying, "You might just be 20 years old, but you seem to know something here. I've never seen this before. Why don't you teach me?" And so he's become a sifu at the age of 20 years old to all these folks who are older than him. And they're all poorer than him. They're all folks who have lived through racism. His friend Jesse Glover on the far left has, at the age of 12, been beaten silly by police to the point where his jaw's knocked out, and his teeth is coming out. Taki Kimura, who's over here on the left, was incarcerated. He's 18 years older. When he was 18, he wasn't getting into fights. He was getting ready to go to Washington State University, and then Executive Order 9066 came down. And so he's learning what it means to be an underdog, where he's lived a privileged cha-cha childhood in Hong Kong. And I think that this is what makes him become the person that he becomes. But fast forward, he gets the call to go to Hollywood in 1964. And he ends up playing this guy. But I need to say this. This is what you guys really got to understand. Like, the Green Hornet is really cool and all. And Kato is even cooler, obviously. But his audition was for the role of Charlie Chan's son. Like, these are the roles that they had available to Asian men in, 1964.
Right, Fu Manchu or Charlie Chan.
You're going to be Charlie Chan or you're going to be Fu Manchu. If you're going to be Charlie Chan, you'll be the good Chinaman. And if you're
non-threatening.
And if you're going to be the bad Chinaman, you're going to be the Xi Jinping Chinaman, then you're going to be like the Yellow Peril guy, right? And that, of course, dovetails with the anti-Japanese stereotypes, the Mr. Moto type stereotypes as well. So it's like in some ways, there's a parallel, right, with Anna May Wong,
Yeah.
and the roles that she's allowed to play.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in Bruce, as a man, in his case, it's like, well, you must, the good Asian male must help white men, right, or white superiority, right,
and maintain order.
Maintain order, right. So that's what Charlie Chan does, and I mean, to some extent, Kato too, right. And for Anna May Wong, it's different in that, like, you have to be sexually available to white men. That, I think, is the difference in their genders.
But when it comes down to something, when it comes really down to it, like love or maintaining the racial and gender order, like you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah, because you're not worthy.
Right.
kind of mentality. Like, you'll
Right.
never be equal. I will never marry you. You will be rejected. You're just a plaything.
Can we go back? Can we go back a little bit to talk about Daughter of the Dragon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a picture over here, right, of it? I think
I think so.
I'll find it for you. If
Is
you,
it the one with Sasu Hayakawa?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Not this one.
so just to illustrate, I mean, the film that is really like the dragon lady stereotype. I mean, I don't know if that's really the birth of it, but it could be.
I think it is. No?
Yeah, I mean, it should be.
Probably-
It's
it
Daughter
probably
of the
is.
Dragon,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
She's playing the daughter of Fu Manchu, and this is actually, ironically, this is her big comeback to Hollywood. So she's been in Europe for 3 years. She's had all of this success. Paramount and Hollywood in general have finally come around and thought, well, maybe we messed up in letting her go. Maybe we should have given her some leading roles. And so this is what Paramount comes up with for her as a starring vehicle. I mean, they put a lot of money into this film. The sets were really gorgeous. She has an incredible number of costumes that are all designed by Travis Banton, who is like the legendary costume designer at Paramount. So you can tell that, and they've brought in Sasu Hayakawa, who hadn't been in films in a while. This is actually his first talkie. And they also bring in Warner Oland, Swedish actor to play Fu Manchu, who then later becomes famous for playing Charlie Chan.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So they're spending a lot of money on this. I mean, we can talk about this later too. You know, Anime Wong is actually getting paid the least amount of money, even though it's her starring vehicle.
Let's talk about this. I mean, there's like an Asian discount, an Asian American discount.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, right?
A severe discount.
A super, super severe discount.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they're getting paid like generic drug
Peanuts.
price. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when Bruce is on the set at Green Hornet, he's the number 2 billed person, but he's getting paid basically the rate of the stuntmen.
Right.
All the other white actors who are playing maybe a quarter of the time that he has on screen are getting paid twice and 3 times as much as he's getting paid.
Yeah, and a lot of what it's about, it's like, what are you willing to put up with, right? Because they know it means so much just to have that opportunity that they can kind of leverage, oh, well, we don't have to pay you that much. I mean, and I don't know if Anime Wong was aware of, I mean, I feel like she must have known, but, you know, she was getting paid $6,000. Sasu Hayakawa, you know, granted he had been a bigger star, was getting paid $10,000, and then Warner Oland, the Swedish actor playing the part in Yellowface, was getting paid the most, I think maybe like $15,000, and he was like in the film for a few minutes compared to the other two.
Well, you know, they're making up for all that makeup they had to put on and
Right,
the
the time
eye stuff and everything. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so anyways,
All the time he's sitting there getting made up.
this film just shows you the lack of imagination that Hollywood had for Asian actors and artists, right? They just couldn't see her doing anything other than a Fu Manchu story, or maybe back to a Madame Butterfly, right? Like, this is it. Like, this is the best we can do for you. Nothing human. This is, you know, it totally lurid. The script is ridiculous. You know, I will avenge. I lust for the blood, you know, of the people who killed my father, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And the thing that drives me crazy about this is these are the 2 biggest pioneering Asian American stars in Hollywood. And so you have an opportunity to actually tell a breakthrough story, but instead it's a Fu Manchu vehicle. And the ending is just, should we give it away? Nah. Well, we
Well,
won't give
I mean,
it away.
I was actually going
We'll
to.
make you suffer
I
through
mean,
it because we had to watch it. No, it's Seshu and Anime Wong are incredible in the movie. It's just the script, boy.
Oh, the script is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and so unfortunately, it's a film actually that she gets remembered for a lot.
Yeah, yeah. There's a book named after it. Anyway, the interesting thing. So let's go back to Bruce here real quick on the Green Hornet. So Daughter of the Dragon is what, 1939?
1931.
1931. Okay, and so this is 2 generations later. This is 35 years later that he's on this show. Again, he goes out. His audition is for Charlie Chan's son, but they can't imagine an Asian lead, an Asian American lead. So they're like, no, we're not going to do this number one son story. We're going to run the Green Hornet, and we need an Oriental, scare quotes, Oriental sidekick, who was originally Japanese, but they can't call him Kato. They call him Kato because they need to sound it out in Greek. And then he becomes a Filipino, and there's all this other kind of stuff. It's like, the usual fungible Asian stuff. But he comes in, he steps into the role, and his role is to play the driver of Britt Reed, the manservant of Britt Reed, and the cook of Britt Reed. And then when Britt Reed becomes the Green Hornet, and they go out and they fight baddies, Britt Reed eventually gets into trouble because he only has gadgets, and the baddies are, skilled at fighting. And so Kato has to kick ass and save the Green Hornet's ass in every episode. And that's basically, most Green Hornet episodes, except for the ones in which he was able to be given some freedom. And so it's really interesting because, Bruce really wanted to reject roles in which he was going to have to wear a queue and kind of be Hop Sing, like on Bonanza, the Hop Sing cook character on Bonanza, who is just sort of speaking this fake Hollywood Chinese accent, even though these folks were like Shakespearean voiced actors. They had stage presence and they could do that, but they were all forced to speak in that. So he refused to play those roles, but this was the break that he got. And what he was able to do with the break was to introduce Kung Fu and to be so electric that by the middle of the season, the Kato toys were outselling the Green Hornet toys. People didn't care about the Green Hornet. They wanted to see Kato. They wanted to see Kato kick Robin's ass.
I mean, he was doing all the work, right?
He was doing all the work.
He was the real hero.
Yeah, he was. And so it was really interesting that in that sense that he was able to stretch it. And then I wanted you to talk a little bit about how Anna May Wong was able to stretch the roles that she was given, and maybe talk a little bit about going to Europe.
Sure. Well, actually, I mean, the interesting thing is that there is a connection to Charlie Chan, right? And comes later. This is much later after she's done her European tour, but she goes to China in 1936. Mm-hmm. And
is this the one, the Philippine thing?
Do I have a China?
Is this the one?
Oh, maybe the one before?
Okay.
Yeah. So she goes to China in 1936, which is a life-changing moment for her. I mean, when you're Chinese American and you've born here and you feel like you're somewhat divorced from the culture, it was a chance for her to really get in touch with her roots. At the same time, a lot of people there were very critical of the films that she had made, a lot of them in her early years where she was scantily clad, playing these stereotypical roles. And they, of course, didn't understand that she didn't have a say in a lot of those roles, right? So she takes in all of this criticism. At the same time, she's friends with Warner Oland because they've done so many films together where he's in Yellowface. So he's also doing a tour of China. And by this time, he's already famous for being Charlie Chan. And in China, he's welcomed with open arms because people love Charlie Chan, right? He's a positive role model. He solves crimes, helps the white man, that kind of thing. And they're telling Warner Oland, who because he's Swedish, he has the epicanthic fold. Right.
So they actually didn't have to do his eyes.
They didn't have to do his eyes.
So they could save his money. Yeah.
Exactly. And he said, I just brushed my mustache a different direction or whatever. And they're like, yeah, you look Chinese. You could actually be Chinese. And, poor Anna May Wong is getting all of these terrible insults in the media about how old she looks and her clothes are dowdy and blah, blah, blah. But the thing that she takes away from this is that everyone loves Charlie Chan. So she starts thinking, well, why can't I play a role like that, right? Why can't there be a female version of Charlie Chan? And so when she goes back to Hollywood after this whole year in China, she's decided that she's no longer going to play these unsympathetic roles. So she's had this, I think, a slightly different journey than Bruce in that her understanding of these roles that she's been playing evolves over time, and her tolerance to continue playing them decreases, right? She's starting to realize what, bullshit this is. Right. And so she goes back, says, I'm no longer going to play these unsympathetic roles. And she goes to Paramount and says, well, I have this idea to do a series of films where I play a female version of Charlie Chan. Who do you think I should pitch it to? And of course, they're like, well, why aren't you pitching it to us? And so they sign her up, and she's able to do not exactly a detective series, but there are several different films in the late 1930s where she's playing the heroine. The first of those is called Daughter of Shanghai, not Daughter of Dragon. And it's Daughter of Shanghai. She's playing the hero. The male lead is Philip Bond, a Korean-American actor. And so they become the first leading romantic couple in the sound era. But it's because she's kind of used this, backdoor Charlie Chan argument that she's been able to make these films.
But even before that, can you tell us what are some of your favorite Anime Wong films? And maybe there are even some that we might not have heard of or seen, where she's just electric on the screen.
I mean,
she's just sort of,
I think, similar to Bruce. They have that magnetic quality that just makes you want to look at them. And their physicalities are very different, but they do have a physicality, right? They understand, they know how to command a presence in the room or on screen. So with her, I mean, she worked in so many different eras of cinema and television. I mean, Toll of the Sea, despite its stereotypes, is a really great film. Her acting is impeccable. Shanghai Express is her best Hollywood film with Marlene Dietrich. But I personally love her German silent films, which have only recently been restored. One is called Song, the other is Pavement Butterfly, and then a third, which was made in England, Piccadilly, is also a really fantastic film, all at the very end of the silent era, so they're kind of peak. I mean, they're the best that the form has to offer.
and the physicality, especially in Piccadilly. She does a dance scene in the kitchen that's just mesmerizing.
That's her entrance in that film. Is she's supposed to be washing dishes, and instead she's dancing, and the entire room is, just all eyes on her.
But she had to actually go to Europe to do this, to be able to get these kinds of roles.
Yes, so after she does Toll of the Sea at 17, that's her first leading role. She can't get another leading role in Hollywood. Part of it is because she's Chinese, and they make the argument, we can't put you opposite a white male lead because that would be an interracial love story. Anti-miscegenation laws are on the books. They don't have the Hays Code yet, but they're trying to be above board and not have these types of stories, at least with actual actors of color. It's okay when you have a white actor in yellowface. Sure. But they won't put her in these roles, which is why she goes to Europe, because they're willing to give her starring roles. I mean, they're writing film scripts specifically for her. I think this one.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that up.
Yeah, so this is a photo of her in the far left with her sister Lulu. They're en route to Europe, to Germany. And then you can see in the clipping from Mind Film in the center, German film publication, she's very much embraced when she arrives in Germany. She talks about how happy she is there because they don't have the same racial restrictions. She's allowed to play opposite, a German actor. I mean, the film is completely written for her. In fact, they retitle it Song in homage to her Chinese name, Wong Liu Song. And when it comes out, people go crazy for it. It's shown all across the country. They're willing to give her these opportunities to actually show her talents. And that's one of the reasons I really like those films, is because you can see the full range of what she could do. And you never really get that in any Hollywood films.
Yeah. So in a similar fashion, after the Green Hornet ended, it just ran for a season. The ratings were never great enough for it to be maintained. Bruce doesn't have any work. And so because of that, he ends up trying to find work, and he can only really find work as a fight choreographer or as, playing sort of these off-brand roles. And finally, he realizes that there's no way that he's going to be able to be seen the way that he sees himself, which is as a main character, right? And that's when two things begin to happen. One is he, I guess we could put that up, but he is up for a role in a TV show that's called Kung Fu. And now Kung Fu is something that he has been one of the major people in popularizing in the US. During the 1960s, He is seen as the maverick of the American martial arts scene, and he's somebody who brings this sort of formerly unknown art form of Kung Fu to the center stage. Even though he hasn't had a lot of training, formal training in different forms of Kung Fu. So all the kids, all the orphan kids of the 1950s in Hong Kong, they grow up to fight on rooftops and to be in these different sort of kung fu fight clubs where they're basically testing each other's styles with each other. They have this huge culture called Beimo. And this is a digression, but I'm coming back. You're going to see where this is going. So all of the folks are literally in these different kung fu styles and schools testing their skills against each other. My style is better than your style. Well, let's see. Let's try fighting on the rooftop tomorrow at 6 p.m. And they do that. And they're doing this in the 1950s. In the 1960s, they've all joined the film industry. And so kung fu films become popular for a group of folks that rose through this chaotic orphan generation to now like trying to figure out who they are in the world. And kung fu captures the political turmoil of the time. There's a very strong leftist movement. There's a very strong labor movement. There's like all kinds of political changes that are happening. And these kung fu movies are everything. Folks just love seeing this stuff happen. And so these movies become the biggest movies in Asia. They replace all the Japanese movies that, the golden era of Japanese film. They replace a lot of those films in all of the cinemas across Asia. And they get so big that by the time you get to the 1970s, folks are like, we should maybe think about bringing this stuff over to the US. So this script, written by two Jewish guys from New York City, one of them is a real big karate fan and a kung fu film fan, becomes the script that a Warner producer named Fred Weintraub wants to try to produce. And at the same time, Bruce is developing a series called Warrior, or The Warrior, or The Way of the Warrior. Here Comes the Warrior. There's a bunch of different names. This eventually becomes a TV series that many of you have probably seen on Cinemax, but that was on ice for many, many years. Kung Fu was moving forward. And so they say, let's try this guy out. Let's audition him. This guy, Fred Weintraub, really believes in Bruce Lee. Bruce goes and he tries out. It's a crazy tryout. He goes in and he drops his bag. He throws a punch that ends like here on the in front of the producer's face. Then he takes out his nunchucks and he starts flinging them in the guy's face. And the guy's like, whoa, 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 what's going on here? And so the next day, Fred Weintraub calls this TV producer and he says, what do you think? He's all like, well, he's good, but I think he's too authentic. And the thing is that what he said was people are not going to be able to understand his accent. So we've got to get David Carradine and break out the makeup kits. And that's how David Carradine becomes the star of Kung Fu, the TV series. And so at that point, he's already done a movie in Hong Kong called The Big Boss. And he's electrified Asia because he's revolutionized the fight styles. He's made it much more direct. People remember him from when he was the orphan. And he goes on to become the biggest star in Asia. And because of that, he's able to get the opportunity to make his own movie, The Way of the Dragon, and then for Hollywood to come calling back for him. At one point, he's like, I'm not really going to go back. I'm here in China. I'm not going to go back until I get it done the way that I want to get it done. And that's the other thing that I loved about Anna May Wong is that she was like, no, we're going to do it my way at the end. She's just like, we're going to just do this my way.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about that story you just told that always strikes me that, oh, he's too authentic. This is too much for us, is that the producers always have they always have a something that they're going to say. It's never yes. It's you're either too authentic or not authentic enough. You're too Americanized. You're too modern. You don't look Chinese enough. I mean, that was a thing. I don't know if we have space to talk about The Good Earth a little bit
let's talk
here.
about the good. We have to talk about the Good Earth, and then we should go to questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So just quickly about The Good Earth. The Good Earth was, this, probably many of you have heard of it. It was a book based by Pearl Buck. It was being made to be an epic film in the 1930s. A lot of Chinese Americans were very positive about it because it was going to be a sympathetic portrayal of the Chinese. And one of the, they scouted a lot of different people to try and cast for this film. They went up and down the West Coast, going to Chinatowns. They went to China to, test people, and they came back and said, no, none of them work. We're going to have...
They look too Chinese.
They look too Chinese.
They're not attractive enough.
They don't speak English well. And then it was the Chinese Americans, they don't look Chinese enough. They're too Americanized. They're too modernized. They don't speak, this and that. And so, of course, and meanwhile, all the other chatter was like, who's going to play the female lead? This is a perfect role for Anime Wong. She's been waiting her entire career to play this. Of course, she doesn't get it. And instead, they give it to a German actress, Louise Reiner, who's still learning English, by the way.
Right.
But that's
She's German.
She's German, yeah. But that's completely fine.
Right.
That's more authentic somehow.
And then she wins the Oscar for it. So we've kind of given you a little bit of an overview, a really truncated one. Maybe we have some time for questions. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, back here. Yeah.
Hello, how y'all doing today? My name is Donald Gobin. I just was wandering by the neighborhood and I heard about this cool event.
Welcome.
I've collected a couple of books by Asian authors in Chinatown and in Manhattan. There's a nice bookstore over there. But I just was wondering, y'all did so much work collecting so much of Asian American cinema history. Should y'all have y'all thought about making like a documentary or something about it? Because it's so.
Why not?
You got financing? We will rock that. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. There's some over, yeah.
I'm not sure if you're able to comment on this, but your story of Anime Wong going to Europe to make films has a parallel in Josephine Baker going to Europe because of the treatment of African Americans in the film industry. I wonder if you have any backstory, or is it just out of what you were comfortable talking about?
That's a great question. I do mention Josephine Baker briefly. I don't know if she and Anime Wong ever met, but I'm pretty sure that Anime Wong was looking to people like Josephine Baker and Paul Robeson, who she was friends with, watching Black Americans leave the U.S., go to Europe, and have their success there. I'm sure that was very much on her mind. And it is something I've explored a little bit. I write a newsletter called Half Caste Woman, so I've explored kind of their three stories in parallel there. But I think as a artist of color at that time, it was really difficult to work here.
Hi, good evening. Edward from Coney Island. I'm a short filmmaker, and last November I was in LA downtown, and I went to the Anime Expo. It was in a small building off some freeway. I loved it. And to come back here tonight, phenomenal. What I would like to know, the Asian World Film Festival, it's in Culver City every November. They'll be egging just to get this in their program. If you're familiar with George, he runs the program there.
Yeah, thank you. That's we do know about Asian World, the festival. Yeah? No, we don't? Okay. We'll figure it out. We'll get the information with you afterwards. Yeah. Oh, he was just suggesting. Yeah, he's just suggesting that we look into doing this program again. No? Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that suggestion. Yeah, yeah.
In Los
In
Angeles.
Los Angeles, yes. Yes.
One of my questions was about Bruce Lee. Enter the Dragon was an incredible movie that's been watched over and over again all these years. And one of the most impressive things about it was Bruce Lee's at the center of it, but you have all these actual martial arts champions, like Jim Kelly was middleweight champion, Bob Wall, North American champion. That's right. How did he pull all of them into his movie?
Yeah. So if you watch his earlier movies, for instance, Fist of Fury, he had brought in his student, Bob Baker, to play the Russian that was supporting the Japanese, right? And then, of course, Way of the Dragon that followed that, the movies were in different orders, shown in different orders in the US. So we have the chronology kind of, those of us who remember the movies have the chronology a little backwards, but Fist of Fury was followed by Way of the Dragon, which is his own movie. And that's when he brings in Chuck Norris and he brings in, Taekwondo experts and all these other types of folks. That was the world that Bruce was coming from. Bruce was, through the 1960s, seen really as one of the leading mavericks of the American martial arts scene. So he worked with all these folks. They knew of him. He never competed in these contests. This is the high period of national competitions. He never competed because he wasn't into it. He didn't philosophically believe that martial arts were a sport. He thought that you'd learn martial arts in order to figure out how to defend yourself. So if you got into a fight, you're fighting to win, you're fighting to the death, right? You're not going to go out there and play, right? And so the movies allowed him a chance to be able to express his view of the martial arts in a pure way and a socially acceptable way, right? He's not going to be out there killing people except on the screen, right? And again, because he had all the clout, because he was seen as this leading light and this sort of leading thinker and physical martial artist, even though he hadn't competed, he was able to draw these folks in. And so there's a nexus that gets created between the fighting community, the fighting arts community, I should say, and the film community that lasts for a good probably 20 or 30 years after that. So that's the answer. Thank you for the question.
Hello, I'm Chris. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Katie. I wanted to preface my question with a little bit of a personal side where my great-grandmother was Marion E. Wong, one of the earliest known Asian American filmmakers, and my grandmother was on the original cast of the Flower Drum Song.
Marion Wong?
Yes, Marion Wong. And we've got this archive, which, I've seen that you have used a lot of in your writing and your works, and I wanted to know, the kinds of archival material that works best for you guys when you are writing and you're conducting research, and also what the experience is of piecing all of those facts together in making a great picture of someone's career.
The more archival resources, the better, but that sometimes means you take longer to write the book. It's a form of procrastination. With film, having the actual films archived is so important because especially with Anime Wong starting in the silent era, a lot of those early films weren't archived, right? They're lost unless somebody finds them at a garage sale. So having a place where those are publicly available is really important. So I had to travel to England to watch a lot of her European films because we don't have prints of them here. So I think just a shout out to archives in general, they're really important for this type of work. Nowadays, a lot of things are digitized, so I found newspaper archives, online newspaper archives, extremely helpful because they're vast and you can search all sorts of things in them now. So I found those incredibly useful, but there are a lot of individual archives that you end up having to do visits to for very specific things. For example, to look at Chinese movie magazines, there's an archive at Berkeley, so I went there to look at those. New York Public Library has a lot of materials, including things that Anime Wong donated, like her playbills. But your book, Jeff, is so expansive, so I feel like the research for yours could go even wider.
Yeah, I had to. I'm kind of a maximalist. which can be a problem.
And you had living sources.
I did.
people you could talk to.
So I was lucky enough to be able to. So I started the book too late to capture a lot of interviews with Bruce's closest friends, but I was lucky enough to be able to still meet a large number of them and to hear from them directly. And I think especially in the case of the Seattle years, it's not been documented as much, even though I think they're so important. And so the Wing Lit Museum has been doing an ongoing exhibition, I think, for about a decade of Bruce Lee. And that's kind of led to a resurgence in a lot of folks being able to come out and tell their stories. And there's a couple of anchor people in the community who are just really amazing. And then I lucked into some situations, like I wrote letters to people randomly to addresses that I didn't know if they were going to work or not, and they paid off. Like that's the generation that wrote letters, and so I would write letters, and then I get a call like 6 months or 8 months later, different timelines people work on. Sure, I grew up on an island, so it's all good. But those were the kinds of things that we did, and I think in addition, as you raise it, I was thinking about like who are the folks who are actually keeping these archives. Like UCLA keeps an amazing archive, Visual Communications in LA, CAM, they all keep amazing archives. I was able to really rely upon the Hong Kong Film Archive, which is an amazing resource in place. And the biggest and most important sort of collection that I had access to was thanks to the family of Bruce Lee. I was able to access his papers and to be able to look at his ephemera, his collections of notes and all these kinds of stuff in their sort of original state. A lot of the stuff has been republished, but without context, and sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes, like not as tight as it could be. And so being in the archive and being able to piece this stuff together was just an amazing experience for a super nerd like me. Yeah. We have a couple more questions. Do we have more time, or?
We have time for one more.
Okay.
One more. We'll come back here. Okay, we'll do two more because you're sitting next to each other.
Thank you so much for the wealth of information. My name's Jack. I found a lot of parallels with what you've said about the political, social, economic atmosphere that opened up some of the opportunities or a missing lack of opportunity until a further time, like Bruce Lee and Anna May Wong both had to leave and then come back. I heard more recently, similarly expressed by Hollywood stars Michelle Yeoh and Ke Huy Quan, a similar experience where Ke Huy Quan starred in Goonies and then stayed as a choreographer for 20 years until his breakout role in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Would you say this is more based on trends with social, economic, and political trends, or maybe it's as Salisbury, you said, kind of like a lack of imagination until the right story came along and the opportunity presented itself for our actors and actresses?
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with external situations, economics, or anything like that. It's an unwillingness to cast Asians for roles. I mean, now at least we can get cast for Asian roles, right? Before you couldn't get cast for anything. I think the problem now.
Except on Broadway.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, there you go. So it's still going on. I mean, these things don't go away unless we demand that they go away. The issue now is that, yes, we have all of these great Asian ensemble television shows, films, and things like that, but why don't we have Asian actors being race-blind casted into lead roles in films that have nothing to do with being Asian, right? Like, we haven't really seen that. I mean, Simu Liu, he was in that, I don't know the name of that film that he was in recently, but I was like, it wasn't a film I was going to watch, but he was like part of a boating crew or something. And he was playing a character that could have been anyone, right? And I was like, good for him that he's getting that role. It's not a great film, but like, that's what we need.
Barbie, the Barbie role?
No, not the Barbie role.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. I mean, well, okay.
No, I mean, Barbie role is great.
Yeah.
We need an Asian Barbie, right?
Yeah. Or an Asian Ken. Yeah.
Ken, sorry.
But I do want to say this, though. I want to emphasize this. Like, one of the things that this was going to be the last big question, so maybe we can just maybe go to some of that, right? To talk a little bit about the importance of the characters and the long arc to where we get to right now, right? And to think about, like, all the stuff that Anna May Wong had to go through to get where she got, and then she passes away, right, on the verge of the Flower Drum Song, like, actually beginning production, right? And then Bruce doing all that he could, and then passing away, right, in 1973. And then you have another generation before you get the rise of a number of big, right, productions on TV and in film, right? Joy Luck Club, Brandon's in Rapid Fire, and then The Crow. Dragon comes out, which Jason Scott Lee was incredible in, and which the script I have a lot of problems with. But, this is another period, right? That particular Joy Luck Club and Dragon and Brandon's doing his thing, The Crow, then he passes away. Then we have to wait another generation, right? All American Girl is actually happening at the same time. And then we have to wait another generation till Fresh Off the Boat, Crazy Rich Asians. And it's almost like, for me, when Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, it was like, now we have to think about a science fiction premise so that you can see us in all our humanity. So that Michelle Yeoh can play a million different versions of herself in the multiverse, right? And you can see the range of what our humanity can be in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that's sort of another peak. But these are things that happened because of things that were happening in the streets, right? The sort of Asian American Renaissance that was happening because we were gaining more prominence, but then it also happened because of the pandemic and the anti-Asian violence that occurred because of that. So that's when these stories are getting greenlit. The Black Lives Matter movement is in the streets. Stop API Hate is in the streets, right? And that's when Hollywood is like, okay, all right, you guys want some films? You're getting some films, right? And that's what happens. And what we have to be like wary of is getting into another point where there's going to be the tide going out again, right? We're at a period now where the number of shows and TV are collapsing, like movies are not getting greenlit as much, right? Does that mean, and a lot of people have lost their jobs, right? A lot of people have lost their jobs in the industry. Does that mean that we're going to be able to tell our stories like over the next 4 or 5 years in the way that we've been telling them in the last 4 or 5 years, right? And in part, it's up to all of us to continue to press, to be able to say, we want Chief of War, right? We want, we want different types we want stuff. We want Simu to play like in the Barbie sequel, right? But we want this stuff, right? And we have to continue to be able to kind of force that question because what's clear is that stuff just doesn't happen. So I think, right, like Anna May Wong gets all these parts when China becomes, the ally instead of the enemy and blah, 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 blah. So yeah.
No, I mean, I'll just echo what you said is that none of this happens by itself. It always takes a person or a village to push all of these things. I mean, I think you see that with Anna May Wong's career. She's constantly pushing for more. And she only gets those progressive films. They're B movies, but she gets them because she asks for them, right? Bruce Lee, his whole career is working up to Enter the Dragon. And, who knows what he would have done, had he lived beyond that. But, and how intensely, he was maxed out, right, for that film. Yeah, I mean, he was doing everything. So you see all of the effort that gets put into this, and then when that person is gone, it kind of just disappears. And I think that's the really important part about learning about figures like Bruce Lee and Anna May Wong is that their legacies are really important to what's going on now because none of this is new. And the other thing too is to remind ourselves that Asian Americans have been in entertainment, have been in Hollywood since the very beginning. So this myth that we're behind, we're not in, we're not in all of these films or places because we haven't been here long enough is a complete myth.
One more quick question. Although you ended on a great note. I'm just curious about, you've discussed these incredible people, but your process in telling the story and where you started and if anything changed while you were doing this and how you were able to make it different than all the other biographies that have been written. And is there anything that you wish you could have added, but you had to wrap things up?
And this is for both of us, right?
Yes. Yeah, for both of you.
Very hard question. I'll go first because I'll give you some time.
Thank you.
When I thought about writing a book about Anna May Wong, I mean, yes, it's a biography, but I wanted it to be narrative driven. And I was really hung up on the Good Earth episode of her career because it's the thing that people talk about the most. If you read the Wikipedia page, it's basically like, oh, she didn't get the lead role in The Good Earth. How sad, the end. And to me, like, that's really not the story. Like, she did so much more than that, and she had a career after that point. So I wanted to, like, let's deal with this elephant in the room once and for all, and let's also reveal what the Good Earth was. Like, maybe it's really not the film we all, like, people want to think it is. It's a hokey Hollywood version of China. It's not reality. So anyways, that was my MO. So that allowed me to kind of cut certain things out of the book because, other people have written biographies about her. I don't need to cover every single thing that ever happened. I will say there are a couple things that every book has a few mistakes, and so does mine. And so there are a couple things that I wish I could have caught before it went to press. But yeah, if you want to know those details, you can find me later.
The other thing is your book's really long, and my book's really long too. And we both threw everything that we had into our books. It's an interesting question to ask about, like, the absence of things in the book, especially so soon after having it, like, pubbed, which was yesterday. I'm sure, like, in a month or two, I'll be meeting more people and being like, wow, I wish I had known this story. It happened with Can't Stop, Won't Stop. It still happens today with Can't Stop, Won't Stop. And, there's not really much you can do about it in this particular format, right? If we were writing for the web, we could write 560 web pages, nobody would read it, and we could revise it forever. But I think what I tried to do with this book was similar to what you're trying to do, was to sort of reveal the real human beneath the legend. I think there's a way in which Bruce is lionized in part because we can project all kinds of things onto him because we actually don't know a lot in general about his life. So he's as big and important as Muhammad Ali or Bob Marley. And we know a lot about Bob Marley and Muhammad Ali's lives, right? And we don't know too much about Bruce's, generally, I think. And so in that regard, I wanted to try to reestablish that. It actually makes you understand how vulnerable he was at some certain points, how much he ached, how big the desire was that he had, this sort of dragon main character energy thing that Anna May and Bruce both had was just formidable. But it also reveals just how large both their accomplishments were when we start getting back to the details of what they were, dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Their doubts, the shade they encountered all the time, the letters that they wrote pleading to directors and producers to allow them to have more words to say in an episode or those kinds of things. Like, that stuff is kind of heartbreaking, when you think about that. But it's also amazing when you think about, like, well, then we got to enter the dragon, So we left it all out on the table, and it's for sale in the back, y'all. So if you want to, like, purchase it, we'll go and sign it for you. And I think maybe we can wrap right there. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you.